Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Tuesday, March 21st, and this is the beginning of an interview with Diana Cattani at the office of Macomb Catholic Services of 15945 Canal Road in Clinton Township, Michigan. Ms. Cattani is, how old are you?
71.
71,
yes.
And being born in 1937.
1934.
34? I'm sorry.
1934.
Wow.
Yes, I remember it well.
And you currently live
in Harrison Township.
In Harrison Township.
Yeah.
My name is Butch Koff, and I will be the interviewer today. I just met Diana, and Paul Wilhelm will be our videographer. Sitting in as guests are Dave Brousseau and Steve Lutz. Before we get into your veterans experience, Diana, can I call you Diana?
Surely.
Okay. Let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were born, where did you grow up, go to school, and how you ended up in your branch of service.
I was born in Henry Ford Hospital in the city of Detroit. And I've always mentioned that because that was big in those days. I went to Grand Elementary School. I lived in Detroit as a youngster. I went to Grand Elementary School, went on to Pershing High School, and then went on to Wayne State University, which was Wayne University at that point. I was going to teach home economics, and I was doing very well. And I liked it, except I had to live at home, and that became rather difficult. So I thought of something that I could do that would be good, because I think it's important to do good and to do well, to join the military, because I would have some place to live, something to eat, and something to study, to learn. And I wanted to see something of the world, and I found it very interesting. Even just getting on the train and going to Lackland was interesting, because they actually had deserts and big bodies of water and all kinds of things that I thought were just someone's imagination when, as a child, I saw them in pictures. I used to go
so you enlisted?
I enlisted. They asked me, did I want to be an officer, because actually I tested very well, but I wasn't feeling very secure in myself in those days. So.
And you had a degree from Wayne?
No, I didn't yet. I didn't yet have the degree. I still don't have a degree. I had about 3 years at Wayne and odd and sundry classes over at Macomb that I wanted to take it in accounting, especially there, which helped me in my career after that. So I spent, what, about a year, I forget how long, from July of 1953 to October of 1954 in the Air Force. And during that time, I went to basic training at Lackland Air Force Base. I think it was for 9 weeks, 8 weeks, something.
Was that your first time out of the Detroit area?
Yes. And everything was very strange. I heard a little tiny girl. She was the cutest little thing with little black hair and all kinds of freckles. And she opened her mouth to speak, and I thought she was teasing, but she was from Brooklyn. and I would stare at her for a while until I got used to it. But everybody had different accents and different ways of dressing and behaving, and I thought that was very interesting. Some were from California and from, I don't know, all over.
Did you mention that Lackland? Where was that at?
Lackland is in San Antonio, Texas. And our big weekend that we got to go out, we went to the San Antonio Zoo, which was pretty thrilling. They had an enormous python there. The biggest thing I ever saw. It was huge.
Well, tell us a little bit about your experience in basic training and what you thought that both the physical and educational part of.
Well, they gave us a lot of it was remedial. They wanted us to be to know how to do math and language skills and learn rules and be able to follow them without question, to be able to have our gear, whatever it was, our clothing, all in absolute order and iron starched, and no more than 2 pieces of laundry in your laundry basket at any given time, which, trust me, was very difficult in those days to only have 2 pieces of laundry in there. So we'd wash things out at night and hang them over the bed thing, and then put them away in the morning.
How do you feel about that discipline?
Well, I had always been taught to be very neat, so but yeah, 2 pieces of laundry was a little bit much, I thought. I think, you know, laundry bags for laundry. And it's not that easy to do the laundry. There wasn't as if you had machines, etc., readily available. So that wasn't so very easy. But I did fine, and during that whole time I got exactly one gig because I placed a box the wrong way in my closet. So I got 1 gig in that whole time. I was annoyed with myself, let me put it that way. I got through it just fine. They marched us from one end to the other, and we had all kinds of honors for marching because we spent a lot of time on our feet. I swear it was 9 hours a day on our feet marching. And of course, when we went through the chow line, we had to go to, you know, stand at attention, take 2 feet forward, and anyway, march to food. And so that it was very, very regimented, and there was really very little time that we weren't being taken care of. We all lived together in barracks. All women were together. We were called WAFs. It wasn't anything. It wasn't as it is now at all. Very different. We didn't learn how to use guns or anything like that because they knew we weren't going to be fighting. Although I don't think it would have hurt many of us to fight, but they didn't in those days anyway. Anyway, I think we were all physically stronger and mentally stronger too by the time all that was done. We did things like KP, which was something less than thrilling. Especially when you were the one who was short and got the big pots, those great big huge monstrous things that they do things like cook mashed potatoes in. That was a little on the hard side, but we managed. Some poor guy had to come in and do the trash, you know, the dumping stuff down the trash and stuff like in the sewer, and we didn't have to lift the whole thing full or anything like that. We had some guy come in and do it. That's the only thing the men came in and did that we didn't do. Everything else we did ourselves.
Did you mention that you went in May? Was it hot down there?
No, I actually went at the beginning of July.
Oh.
And yeah, it was hot, but it was very dry, and I didn't seem to mind that very much. It went up to 110 or something, and we were out there marching, and I learned to drink Dr. Pepper. I learned to really, really, really appreciate Dr. Pepper. I don't think I could have made it without Dr. Pepper.
That product wasn't up here in the Detroit area.
No, oh no. That was very new. That was very new, and I drank it. If they had one of those machines that sold pop, I got Dr. Pepper.
So
I find that amusing to this day.
I think it's very amusing. So in boot camp, were you being tested for your future, I don't know what you would call it, job description?
Well, they gave us a long test, and they rated us in perhaps 7 categories or so. I didn't do very well at all with the mechanical part because I am not mechanically minded. But when it came to the things that had to do with administration and office procedure, I forget the exact titles of them, I did very, very well in that. And what they wound up doing was giving me a stripe and sending me over to Keesler Air Force Base down in Biloxi, Mississippi, which was a sleepy little town then, and nobody ever heard the word casino in those days. It was a little bitty town, lovely people in town. The church ladies would give us, I don't know, chicken dinners and pecan pie, and I remember their pecan pie to this day, and that was a long time ago. But there I went through a course for radio operations. So we did Morse code, among other things, and voice communications, and they said I had a really good voice that carried well at that time, so, and clear. And so I did a lot of that kind of thing, studying for that. And I graduated actually at the top of my class, and there were only a few WAFs who were in the class. They were all men.
So it was a co-ed.
That was, yes, but there were, you know, there was me and 40 guys, you know. We still all lived together in a Raft Barracks, right next to the flight line. I will never forget that either, because those airplanes are big and noisy, and they rattled everything. And the barracks were very old. They rattled too. Anyway, I went through the whole course. I graduated top of the class, and in their infinite intelligence, and I say that with my eyes closed almost, they sent me to Selfridge Air Force Base so I could be a clerk typist in an operations squadron. So I was sort of sitting in a kind of garage setting with a desk doing paperwork of varying kinds. And I couldn't imagine, after being first in my class, that they did that to me, but they did.
How long was your training there?
Oh, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 months. It seemed like a long time.
Was that another
really,
hot spot?
How do you mean? I don't know what you mean, hot spot.
Humid, weather-wise?
Yes, you couldn't leave your shoes on the floor, for instance, because it was so very humid. We had to put our shoes upside down, hang them on nails, do anything, because they could not stay on the floor because they would mold. We had to be extremely, extremely careful about all our clothing, because everything would smell like mold if you didn't keep it washed up and ironed up and freshened. And again, laundry things, we didn't have dryers. We did have available to us washing machines, so we would wash our clothes. We had to hang them on a line. And as I understood it, the commanding officer's wife suggested that it was not appropriate for us to hang up our clothes on Sunday, so we couldn't do our laundry on Sunday because we couldn't hang it out. But we would do that like on Saturday afternoons and at night when we were out of school or out of work or whatever it was we were doing.
So now you're out of boot camp and you're in your training. Tell us a little bit about your entertainment side of now that you have a little more freedom in Biloxi.
It didn't really feel like a whole lot more freedom in Biloxi, but we could sort of take shared taxis and go into town. And there was a wonderful beach, and as I said, the church ladies were really lovely. And we'd go up and down the street, we could shop and, you know, have something to eat if we wanted to. That was nice, and we could go see movies or something on base. And I always did projects, so at that time I was doing toll painting, and that kept me amused for a while. And then I walked around Back Bay a lot. It was a long way all the way around the flight line, and I'd walk back there to Back Bay, and it was so gorgeous, especially in the evening when the sun was going down. And the colors were absolutely stunning. It was so peaceful and wonderful. It gave a real wonderful respite to the days there.
Now this was during the Korean War conflict. Did you have any feelings about that? Any perspective of what's going on at the time? Being in the service, obviously you're associated with that.
Well, you know, they didn't talk about war. I used to get Time magazine, so I would read up. I needed to know something because they really didn't talk about the war. They didn't talk about why or where or who or how much or anything. And I find today that I am very interested in those kinds of questions, and I'm always looking, and I write articles to the newspaper. I write letters to the president. I tell him he's wrong, period. In every way I can, I tell him he's wrong.
Does he respond back to you?
Never ever. I really don't expect that he's ever going to respond. I don't expect that he's ever read one of my letters. I really expect that somebody reads them, glances at them or something, and says, okay, 52% of those letters say you're doing a good job and 10% say you stink. Something like that.
Well, it's...
Something, you know, quantitatively, not qualitatively.
You've obviously earned the right to have that.
Oh yeah, I think I earned that right to do that. As long as I don't say anything really god awful, I can say what I want.
I'm surprised finishing #1 in your class that they didn't ask you, you know, or reward you with a duty station of your choice.
They never asked me any questions at all about what I wanted to do until the one time when I had to say no. I fell madly in love with a young man, and we married here in my home church. And I got pregnant, which when you're in the military in those days, as soon as you tell them you were pregnant, you see the doctor and you're out that day. You leave the base. So that's what happened. I think that was, they don't do that today, thank God, because it's really stupid for all that training to go down the tubes like that.
Back me up a little bit. Where did you meet this young man?
In school in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Love at first sight?
No, no, I wouldn't say that. It just seemed like he was a very sweet man. Somebody one could go old with. Didn't happen that way, but that's what it seemed like at the time.
So you met him there. Did you marry him there?
No, I married him up here.
He had assignment up here too?
No, he came up here to marry me, and then he had to go someplace else. He was always going someplace else.
Wow.
He spent a lot of time.
You had that kind of a spell over him that he followed you here, eh?
To marry me, yeah. After that, that was not quite the same story. No, we together after that had 4 children, including a set of twins. And while I was married to him, I did a lot of traveling. I went to, well, my oldest child was born at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina. The other 3 children were born here in Detroit. Because I would come back here, because he was always going somewhere else, wherever it was he was going. He seemed to be gone all the time. But we also went with him to Clovis in Texas.
Was he a lifer?
No, he stayed in about 11.5 years, 11 years, something like that, and then he finally got out. We also went to, and I worked too at George Air Force Base as a civilian. And we went to Okinawa for 19 months, and I worked there too, in procurement,
but this,
as a civilian.
Yeah, because of the fact you had gotten pregnant, that was a no-no?
That was, you're out.
Okay.
Period.
And this is at Selfridge?
That was at Selfridge, yes.
What did you think about Selfridge? Tell me your experiences there.
My experiences at Selfridge? Well, we WAFs were in one little building that was a temporary building, and we had a brig on the first floor where the bad girls had to be jailed, which wasn't thrilling. And later on, they gave us some, if I say well used, that would be an understatement, kind of housing that was closer to the main gate at that time. That part is all gone now. It's been torn down. So, although I have been on base since then for a couple of things, including some hockey games, not hockey games, but games with my grandchildren ran. It's not. It doesn't look at all the same place. Not at all.
And your duties there were just kind of secretarial, clerical?
Clerical. Absolutely clerical, nothing more than that.
That was kind of a disappointment for you?
I was terribly disappointed because I felt underused and kind of abused in a way. I felt as a woman that I was being mistreated, that women were not treated fairly, and to this day I believe that. I believe that happens in every place in the whole United States. I mean, I know it's a great deal better, but women still earn, what is it now, 69% of whatever it is that men earn doing the same job. So I still am very interested in women's rights.
That's probably why you write the president.
Well, that's one of the reasons. One of the reasons. That's not the only one, though. No, he...
Did you try and fight the discharge at all? Or?
No, there was no way to fight it. That was the rule. You were gone. You didn't question. As a matter of fact, we were held in such low esteem that we were told we had to sign a document stating that we would never ask or be buried in the main, outside Washington.
Arlington?
Arlington. We would never be buried in Arlington. no matter what the circumstances.
Why is that? Because of a chauvinistic...
Well, that was my interpretation, yes, that it was chauvinistic. You know, we were trying to do our job.
What was their explanation?
And not all men had a gun and were fighting either, so...
What was their explanation?
They didn't have an explanation. There was no explanation ever given.
Wow.
And I thought that was really rather awful.
It was. Very interesting and awful. Have they changed that policy today, do you know?
I don't know if that policy's been changed. I do know they treat women differently, that they're allowed to remain on their job, they remain in their training, and they let them wear maternity clothes for as long as it's necessary, and they help them with child care. And I think that's for the betterment. And although I worry sometimes about them all being mixed up, because I think they're young and they get kind of foolish, because I know I wasn't the smartest person in the world when I was young. And I'm sure everyone can say the same thing, that when you're 18, 19, 20, 21 in the time frame, you're not very worldly. I wasn't worldly.
So your actual career was foreshortened because of a instance that you don't believe should have caused that.
Absolutely.
But your husband was still in the Air Force.
Yes, he was.
And your background training was in the Air Force, so you followed him around. And
I followed him every time I could, yes.
And it's still that Air Force discipline and mentality are with you.
Well, to make it even worse, I started working for the federal government, Department of Defense, and spent 30 years. I retired from the federal government.
And your grade was what? A G?
When I 11, I was a GS 11.
That's pretty high, isn't it?
Well, it is, yes, and because I didn't have a degree, that was one thing. But I did pass their college entrance examination, which I was very proud of doing that. It wasn't the college entrance; it was a test for college graduates. I want to be more specific than that. It was, and I passed that very highly. And then I went to Macomb and was taking accounting lessons because accounting training, because that's what I was doing for the government. I worked in Rochester, New York, George Air Force Base, and there was Air Force Contract Management District on Concord in Detroit, and then it moved and became Department of Defense in the old Packard plant, if anybody knows what the old Packard plant was. And from there I moved to, because they closed that down, I moved to TACOM and spent the rest of my career there.
This is after all the Air Force traveling is done?
Yes, yes. Oh, I worked in those other places while you know, some of them was when I was as the wife of a military member. For instance, Okinawa, I was working at Naha Air Base, and we lived on Naha, and at George Air Force Base.
In Okinawa?
George was in California,
okay,
in the desert. And Clovis, New Mexico, I was there, but I didn't work at that time. I had too many little babies.
If you wouldn't mind, can you tell me a little bit about your overseas, you know, Air Force / civilian experience in Okinawa? How was that?
Well, I had